there's certain people that you do not want to try and beat at their own game, and certainly Jeff Bezos would be number one. I mean, that'd be like me playing chess with Bobby Fischer, 40 years ago, to be all over on the first move. Jeff, he's just shown amazing talent in figuring out how to please customers in a very short time. And what's interesting to some extent about him, the same thing's interesting about Fred Smith of Federal Express. It isn't that they've had some breakthrough and, found some molecule, this or that, or come up with some, incredible invention. They've taken fairly ordinary things. I mean, starting buying books but Fred Smith took the airplane and the delivery truck and the postal service, but then he just put it together in a very imaginative way, with a central hub and all that, and came up with a whole new industry out of components that were known to everybody. And in a sense, Bezos has done the same thing. Now he's building big distribution centers and employing the latest technology. The Kindle came out of there, and there's some products, but overwhelmingly, he's taken things that you and I were buying before, and he's figured out a way to make us happier buying those products, either by fast delivery or prices or whatever it may be. And that's remarkable when you think about it.
Went to my boss and said to him, I'm going to go do this crazy thing, and I'm going to start this company selling books online. Then he said, let's go on a walk. And we went on a 2-hour walk in Central Park in New York City. And the conclusion of that was this, he said, this actually sounds like a really good idea to me. But it sounds like it would be a better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And he convinced me to think about it for 48 hours before making a final decision. And so I went away and was trying to find the right framework in which to make that kind of big decision. And I'd already talked to my wife about this, and she was very supportive and said, look, you can count me in 100%. So it really was a decision that I had to make for myself. And the framework I found, which made the decision incredibly easy, was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life. I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. And I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret having trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day. So when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision. If you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. I left this Wall Street firm in the middle of the year. When you do that, you walk away from your annual bonus. And that's the kind of thing that in the short term can confuse you. But if you think about the long term, then you can really make good life decisions that you won't regret later.
One of my jobs as the leader of Amazon is to encourage people to be bold. And people love to focus on things that aren't yet working. And that's good, it's human nature. That kind of divine discontent can be very helpful. But it's incredibly hard to get people to take bold bets. And you need to encourage that. And if you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time whether they're going to work. Experiments are by their very nature prone to failure. But big successes, a few big successes, compensate for dozens and dozens of things that didn't work. So, bold bets, AWS, Kindle, Amazon Prime, our third-party seller business, all of those things are examples of bold bets that did work, and they pay for a lot of experiments. I've made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon.com. Literally billions of dollars of failures. But they don't matter. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure, they eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do is make a kind of Hail Mary bet at the very end of their corporate existence. Whereas companies that are making bets all along, even big bets, but not bet the company bets. I don't believe in bet the company bets. that's when you're desperate. That's the last thing you can do.
You don't choose your passions choose you. How they are formed, you're never completely sure. But I do think you get imprinted somehow early on with certain things. You just get excited about them. And because you're excited, you pay more attention and they grow. Being an inventor requires, because the world is so complicated, you have to be a domain expert. I mean, in a way, even if you're not at the beginning, you have to learn enough so that you become a domain expert. But the danger is once you've become a domain expert, you can be trapped by that knowledge. And so inventors have this paradoxical ability to have that, 10,000 hours of practice and be a real domain expert and have that beginner's mind. Have that look at it freshly, even though they know so much about the domain. And that's the key to inventing. You have to have both. And I think that is intentional. I think all of us have that inside of us, and we can all do it, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to say, yeah, I am going to become an expert, and I'm going to keep my beginner's mind. Well, long-term thinking is a lever. It lets you do things that you could not do or couldn't even conceive of doing if you were thinking short-term. If I collaborated with somebody here in this audience and I said, look, I want you to solve world hunger, and I want you to do it in 5 years, you would properly reject the opportunity. You would say, look, it's not possible, it's not practical. But if I said, look, I want you to solve world hunger in 100 years, that's a job you'd take because it's a much more addressable problem. You can first create the conditions. You have time to create the conditions where then you can solve the problem. And so that's a very important way of thinking. And it works with everything. I mean, you have to back up and find the right time horizon for what you're trying to do. But, at Amazon, we probably do most of our things we expect to get some results in sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But we find a lot of our other companies that compete against us in various ways, they're often trying to get things done in, 2 or 3 years. And so we can do things that, if everything has to work in 2 to 3 years, then that limits what you can do. If you give yourself the breathing room to say, okay, I'm okay if it takes 7 years, all of a sudden you have way more opportunities.
Jules Verne, Mark Twain, Galileo, Newton, all the curious from the ages would have wanted to be alive, most of all, right now. As a civilization, we will have so many gifts, just as you as individuals have so many individual gifts as you sit before me. How will you use these gifts? And will you take pride in your gifts or pride in your choices?
You can choose. We all get to choose our life stories, and it's the choices that define us, not our gifts. Everybody in this room has many gifts. I have many gifts. You can never be proud of your gifts because they're gifts. They were given to you. You might be tall, or you might be really good at math, or you might be extremely beautiful or handsome, or there are many gifts, and you can only be proud really of your choices because those are the things that you are acting on. And one of the most important choices that each of us has, and you know this just as well as I do, is you can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. And when you're 80, which one of those things do you think you're going to be more proud of? You're going to be more proud of having chosen a life of service and adventure.